The old ship floated in space like a dead thing. It had been there for so long that most aliens forgot it existed. The ship was dark and silent, turning slowly in the black void between the stars. Its metal hull was covered with scars and dents. From thousands of years in space, Commander Veltar looked at the strange vessel through his viewing screen. He had seen it many times before during his patrols through this sector of space. The ship was huge, almost 2 kilometers long, but it never moved or sent out any signals. His people, the Zephyrians, had ruled this part of the galaxy for 5,000 years. They controlled 17 star systems and had defeated every enemy they ever faced. The mysterious ship meant nothing to them. It was just old junk floating. In space, Veltar was standing on the bridge of his warship, the Endless Victory. Around him, his crew worked at their stations, monitoring the mining operations on the nearby planets. The Zephyrians had built massive cities on 3 worlds, and this system, millions of their people lived here, digging valuable metals from the ground and sending them to other Zephyrian worlds. The strange ship had been here before the Zephyrians arrived. When their first scouts found this system, the ship was already floating here, dead and cold. Our scientists had scanned it many times over the centuries. They found no life signs, no energy readings, no movement. The ship appeared to be made of some kind of metal they did not recognize. But it looked primitive compared to their own technology. Captain Zixara approached Veltar with a datapad in her hands. She was young for a ship captain, but she was smart and brave. Her green skin had the pale marks that showed she came from the warrior caste of their society. "Commander, we are getting strange readings from the old ship," she said, holding up the datapad. Veltar took the device and studied the numbers on the screen. For the first time in thousands of years, the dead ship was showing signs of energy. It was very small, barely enough to power a simple radio, but it was there. "What do you think it means?" "Probably nothing. Old ships sometimes have energy cells that leak power when they get hit by cosmic radiation. But we should check it out." The Zephyrians had explored thousands of dead ships over the years. Most were just empty hulks with nothing valuable inside. But sometimes they found useful technology or precious metals. Veltar decided this was a good chance to train some of his younger officers. "Prepare a boarding team," he ordered. "Lieutenant Kexmoth and 6 soldiers. If there is anything valuable on that ship, I want to know about it." Zixara nodded and walked away to prepare the mission. Veltar turned back to look at the strange ship. Even after all these years, something about it bothered him. The shape was wrong somehow. Most ships were built for efficiency, with smooth curves and clean lines. This ship looked like it was built for war. It had sharp angles and thick armor plating. Strange symbols were carved into its hull, but they were too faded to read clearly. The Zephyrians had never seen anything like it. In all their travels across the galaxy, their databases contained information about hundreds of different alien species. But none of them built ships that looked like this one an hour later. A small shuttle left the Endless Victory and flew toward the mysterious vessel. Lieutenant Kexmoth was leading the mission. He was an experienced soldier who had been in many battles. With him were 6 of Veltar's best troops, all carrying weapons and scanning equipment. As the shuttle got closer to the old ship, Kexmoth could see more details on its hull. The metal was dark gray, almost black in some places. Long scratches and burn marks covered its surface. Whatever had happened to this ship, it had been through a terrible battle long ago. "Look at the size of those weapon ports," one of his soldiers said, pointing at holes in the ship's hull. "This thing was built to fight." Kexmoth nodded. The ship had more weapons than most Zephyrian warships, but they all looked old and simple compared to modern technology. The aliens who built this ship must have been a violent species, but they were probably extinct now. The shuttle found a place to dock near what looked like an airlock. Kexmoth and his team put on their breathing gear and checked their weapons. They had no idea what they might find inside the old ship, but they were ready for anything. "Remember, we are just here to look around and take some pictures," Kexmoth told his soldiers. "Do not touch anything unless I tell you to." The airlock opened with a loud hiss of escaping air. Emergency lights flickered on in the corridor beyond. casting strange shadows on the walls. The soldiers looked at each other in surprise. The ship still had power after all these years. Kexmuth stepped into the corridor first, his weapon ready. The air inside the ship was stale but breathable. The walls were made of the same dark metal as the outside hull. Everything looked old but well built. Whoever made this ship knew how to build things that would last. As they walked deeper into the ship, more lights came on automatically. The corridors were smaller than Zephyrian ships, built for creatures that were shorter and thinner than his people. Strange writing covered the walls, but none of them could read it. They found what looked like a command center filled with dark screens and control panels. When Kexmuth touched one of the panels, it suddenly came to life with bright lights and white lights and white lights. Moving pictures, or screens activated around the room, showing star maps and lists of information in the alien language. "Sir, you need to see this." One of his soldiers called from across the room. Kexmuth walked over and saw a screen displaying pictures of different alien species. He recognized some of them. These were races that the Zephyrians had conquered over the past few thousand years. But how could this old ship have information about species that lived so far away? Then he saw something that made his blood run cold. On the screen was a perfect picture of a Zephyrian warrior, along with detailed information about their biology, their technology, and their military tactics. The information was more complete than anything in their own databases. This dead ship knew everything about them. Kexmuth stared at the screen showing the detailed information about his own people. His hands shook as he read the data. The ancient ship knew everything about Zephyrian biology, their weapons, their battle tactics, even their weak spots. Information that should have been impossible for any outsider to know. "How is this possible?" one of his soldiers whispered. "This ship has been dead for thousands of years." Kexmuth did not answer. He was too busy reading the files on the screen. The ship had records of every major Zephyrian battle from the past 5,000 years. It knew the names of their commanders, the locations of their secret bases, and the exact number of ships in their fleet. "Shh! Look at this." Another soldier called from a different console. "There are files on dozens of other species, too." Kexmuth walked over and saw screens full of alien races. Some he recognized as species. The Zephyrians had fought and conquered. Others were completely unknown to him. Each file contained detailed biological information, technology assessments, and military capabilities. The soldier pointed at one particular file. "These are the Korthok. We destroyed their homeworld 3,000 years ago." "But look at the date on this file." Kexmuth looked at the timestamp. The file had been updated just 50 years ago, but the Korthok were extinct. There were no survivors left to study. "Check the other files," Kexmuth ordered. "See when they were last updated." The soldiers worked quickly, calling out dates as they found them. The Veltrani files were updated 200 years ago. The Nexus Coalition files were updated last year. Even files on species that had been extinct for millennia showed recent updates. This ship had been watching everyone. For thousands of years, it had been collecting information on every alien race in this part of the galaxy. And somehow, it had stayed hidden while doing it. Kexmuth tried to access more files, but many were locked behind security codes. The few he could open made him more nervous with each passing minute. The ship had detailed maps of Zephyrian space, including the locations of their most secret military installations. It knew about Project Starfall, a weapons program that only the highest-ranking commanders were supposed to know about. "Lieutenant, we should report this to the commander immediately," one of his soldiers said. "Not yet," Kexmuth replied. "We need to learn more first." He found a section of files labeled with symbols he had never seen before. The writing looked different from the other alien languages in the database. When he touched the screen, new information appeared. The first thing he saw was a picture of a strange creature. It walked on two legs like a Zephyrian, but it was much smaller and had pale skin instead of green. The creature had hair on its head and small eyes. It looked weak compared to most species in the galaxy. The file was labeled with symbols that meant nothing to him, but there was a translation in several languages. In Zephyrian it read, "Human Species Classification, Homo sapiens Origin, Planet Terra, Sol System." Kexmuth had never heard of this species before. According to the file, humans were from a star system far from Zephyrian space. The file contained thousands of pages of information about their biology, their history, and their technology. But what caught his attention was the military section. These humans had fought wars for their entire recorded history. The file showed pictures of their weapons, from simple metal blades to complex energy weapons. They had built massive fleets of warships and fought battles across multiple star systems. For such a small and weak-looking species, they seemed to love fighting. But the strangest part was the date. According to the file, human civilization had ended over 5,000 years ago. Their homeworld had been destroyed in a great war, and their species was listed as extinct. So why was there a human ship floating in Zephyrian space? Kexmoth dug deeper into the files. He found records of something called the Great Exodus, where humans had fled their dying worlds in massive fleets. The files showed pictures of thousands of human ships escaping into deep space. Most had disappeared, and were never seen again. "Sir, I found something else," one of his soldiers called out. "There is a ship's log here. It is written in the human language, but the computer is translating it." Kexmoth hurried over to read the log entries. His first one was dated over 5,000 years ago. Ship's log, Day 1. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force vessel, U.S. Retribution. We have entered deep space following the evacuation of Earth. Our mission is to establish a monitoring post in Sector 7G and observe alien activity in this region. We will maintain radio silence and avoid detection at all costs." Kexmoth read entry after entry. The human captain wrote about establishing their position in this star system and beginning their observations. They had studied the local planets and mapped the space lanes. And then the Zephyrians had arrived. Ship's log, Day 847. "A new alien fleet has entered our sector. They call themselves Zephyrians and have begun establishing colonies on the inner planets. We are maintaining our position and observing their activities. Initial scans show they are a militaristic species with advanced technology." The log entries continued for years, then decades. The humans had watched as the Zephyrians built their empire. They had recorded every battle, every conquest, every expansion of Zephyrian territory. The ship had been a silent observer for 5,000 years, but the most recent entries were what made Kexmoth truly afraid. Ship's log, Day 1,826,439. "Zephyrian activity in our sector has increased significantly. They have detected our ship but still believe it to be a derelict. All crew remain in stasis as planned. We will continue monitoring until the time comes to act." The entry was dated just 1 month ago. Kexmoth felt cold fear spreading through his body. The humans were not extinct. They were not gone. They were here, on this ship, watching and waiting. And they had been planning something for 5,000 years. "Sir, the ship's computer is asking for authorization codes," another soldier reported. "I think it wants to grant us access to more files. Do not touch anything else," Kexmoth ordered. "We are leaving now." But as he turned to go, more screens came to life around the room. The ship's computer began displaying new information without anyone touching the controls. Star maps appeared showing the locations of every Zephyrian world. Fleet compositions scrolled across multiple screens. Detailed analyses of Zephyrian military strengths and weaknesses filled the displays, and then, in the center of the main screen, a message appeared in perfect Zephyrian language. "Greetings, Zephyrian visitors. You have accessed classified Earth Defense Force files. This intrusion has been logged and transmitted. Please remain calm while we decide what to do with you." The message was followed by an image that made Kexmoth's blood freeze. It was a human face, pale and small-like in the files, but the eyes were intelligent and alert. The human was smiling, but it was not a friendly smile. "I am Captain Jake Morrison," the human said in clear Zephyrian speech. "Welcome aboard the UES Retribution. We have been expecting you." All around the command center, more screens activated. It showed the interior of the ship, revealing corridors that Kexmoth had thought were empty. But they were not empty. Figures in strange suits were moving through the passages, heading toward their location. The humans were awake, and they were coming. Deep inside the human ship, Captain Jake Morrison opened his eyes for the first time in over a century. The cryogenic pod hissed as it released pressure, and warmed his body back to normal temperature. Cold mist poured out as the lid opened, and Morrison took his first breath of recycled air. Around him, dozens of other pods were opening. His crew was waking up after their long sleep. Morrison had done this many times over the past 5,000 years. Every few decades, he and his people would wake up, check their systems, update their files, and then go back to sleep. Time was different. This time, their waiting was over. "Good morning, Captain," said the ship's computer. The voice belonged to Atlas, an artificial intelligence that had been watching over them while they slept. "The Zephyrians have boarded our vessel as expected. All crew members are being awakened according to Protocol 7. Morrison sat up slowly, letting his body adjust. He was a tall man with brown hair that was now gray at the edges. 5,000 years of occasional waking had aged him, but the cryogenic sleep had kept him alive far longer than any normal human lifespan. "How many Zephyrians are aboard?" he asked. 7 soldiers led by Lieutenant Kexmoth. They have accessed our main database and discovered our surveillance files. They now know we have been monitoring their civilization." Morrison smiled. Everything was going exactly as planned. Other crew members were climbing out of their pods around the room. First Officer Lisa Hamilton stretched her arms and looked around. She was a short woman with blonde hair and sharp blue eyes. She had been Morrison's second in command for the entire mission. "Hey, are we finally doing this, Jake?" she asked. "Yes," Morrison replied. "After 5,000 years, it's time to wake up properly." Chief Engineer Paul Rodriguez pulled himself out of his pod with a grunt. He was a big man with dark skin and powerful arms. Rodriguez had kept their ship running through 50 centuries of hiding. Without him, they never would have survived this long. "Let's give me a status report on all systems," Rodriguez said. "All primary systems are operating at full capacity," the computer replied. "Weapons, shields, and engines are ready for combat. Operations. The Zephyrians still believe we are a dead ship." Tactical Officer Kevin Barnes was the last senior officer to wake up. He was young-looking, despite his real age, with red hair and green eyes. Barnes had spent more time awake than anyone else over the years, studying Zephyrian military tactics and planning for this moment. "What's our next move, Captain?" Barnes asked. Morrison stood up and walked to a wall display. It showed the positions. Of every Zephyrian ship in the system, there were over 200 vessels, including the massive command ship Endless Victory. "We follow the plan we've been working on for 5,000 years, Morrison said. "ATLAS, begin Phase 1. The ship's computer acknowledged the order. All around them, systems that had been dormant for decades came to life. The UES Retribution was no longer pretending to be dead. Morrison and his officers walked to the bridge. Along the way, they passed other crew members who were getting dressed and checking their equipment.
Ow.
Everyone knew what they had to do. They had practiced this scenario hundreds of times over the centuries. The bridge was a large room filled with control stations and display screens. As they entered, the lights came on and the screens began showing tactical information. Morrison sat in the captain's chair while his officers took their positions. "Atlas, show me the Zephyrian boarding party," Morrison ordered. A screen displayed the command center where Kexmoth and his soldiers were standing. The Zephyrians looked scared and confused. They'd realized they were trapped, but they did not understand how much trouble they were really in. "Open a communication channel," Morrison said. The main screen showed Kexmoth's face. The Zephyrian lieutenant was pointing his weapon at the camera, but Morrison could see the fear in his eyes. "Lieutenant Kexmoth," Morrison said calmly. "My name is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth's Defense Force. I want to thank you for waking us up." "What do you want from us?" Kexmoth demanded. "Nothing from you personally," Morrison replied. "But your people have made some very bad choices over the past 5,000 years. We've been watching and we don't like what we've seen." Hamilton leaned forward in her chair. "Sir, the Zephyrian command ship is trying to contact their boarding party. Should we block their communications?" Morrison said. "Let them talk. I want Commander Veltar to know what's happening." Morrison could see the bridge of the Endless Victory. Commander Veltar was shouting orders at his crew, but Morrison could tell the alien commander was confused and frightened. Rodriguez spoke up from his station. Captain, all our hidden systems are online. The Zephyrians still think we're just an old derelict, but we're ready to show them otherwise. What hidden systems? Kexmoth asked through the communication channel. Morrison smiled. Lieutenant, your people have been very careless. For 5,000 years, you've been so confident in your superiority that you never noticed what was really happening around you. Barnes touched his control panel, and new information appeared on the screens. Sir, I'm detecting 17 other Long Watch vessels in nearby systems. They're all waking up and preparing for action. Morrison nodded. The Long Watch had been humanity's greatest achievement. When Earth fell, they had not simply run away. They had spread across the galaxy, placing observation ships in strategic locations. Each ship carried a crew of humans in cryogenic sleep and an advanced AI to monitor local alien activity. For 5,000 years, these ships had been invisible observers, learning everything about the species around them. They had studied alien technology, mapped their territories, and identified their weaknesses. And now, all of that preparation was about to pay off. Lieutenant Kexmoth, Morrison said, I'm going to give you some free advice. Tell your commander to surrender now, while he still can. Surrender. Kexmoth laughed. You have one old ship against our entire fleet? What can you possibly do to us? Morrison's smile grew wider. Would you like me to show you? He nodded too. Barnes, who began pressing buttons on his control panel. All around the Zephyrian system, things began to happen. Automated mining stations stopped working. Communication satellites went dark. Even some of the smaller Zephyrian ships began reporting system failures. What's happening? Kexmoth demanded. We've had 5,000 years to prepare for this moment. Morrison explained. Did you really think we spent all that time just watching? We've been busy, Lieutenant. Very busy. Hamilton looked up from her station. Sir, the other Long Watch ships are reporting ready status. Operation Homecoming is go for launch. Morrison stood up from his chair. After 5,000 years of waiting, humanity was finally ready to reclaim their place in the galaxy. The Zephyrians had no idea what was coming, but they were about to learn that waking up sleeping humans was the biggest mistake they had ever made. Atlas, Morrison said, send the signal to all ships. It's time to remind the galaxy that humanity is not extinct. Commander Veltar watched in horror as his fleet began falling apart around him. Red warning lights flashed on every screen of the endless victory. His communications officer was shouting reports of system failures across the entire Zephyrian force. Sir, the mining station on Planet 3 has gone dark, one officer reported. The orbital defense platforms are not responding, called another. Half our patrol ships are reporting engine failures, a third officer added. Veltar could not understand. What was happening? One moment his fleet was in perfect order, and the next moment everything was breaking down at once. He looked at the main screen showing the old human ship. It no longer looked dead and harmless. Lights were glowing along its hull and strange energy readings were coming from its weapons. Get me Lieutenant Kexmoth, Veltar ordered. The screen changed to show the inside of the human ship. Kexmoth was standing in what looked like a command center, but he was no longer alone. Several small aliens in strange uniforms were pointing weapons at him and his soldiers. These had to be the humans, Commander Kexmoth said, his voice shaking. The humans are awake. They say they have been watching us for 5,000 years. Veltar stared at the screen. The humans were much smaller than Zephyrians, but something about them made him nervous. Their eyes were cold and calculating. These were not primitive savages. These were dangerous predators. One of the humans stepped forward. He was tall for his species, with gray hair and calm blue eyes. When he spoke, his voice was steady and confident. Commander Veltar, the human said. I am Captain Jake Morrison. We need to talk. You are my prisoners, Veltar replied, trying to sound strong. Surrender now, and I might let your crew live. Morrison smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. Commander, I think you misunderstand the situation. You are not capturing us. We are capturing you. As Morrison spoke, more reports came in. From around the Zephyrian fleet, ships were losing power. Weapon systems were shutting down. Even the massive command ship was starting to have problems. What are you doing to our ships? Veltar demanded. We're turning off your toys, Morrison replied. For the past 5,000 years, we've been very busy. While you were conquering other species and building your empire, we were learning everything about you. We studied your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses, and we prepared for this day. Rodriguez spoke up from his position at the engineering station. Captain, Phase 2 is complete. 70% of the Zephyrian fleet is now operating on backup power only. Morrison nodded. Thank you, Paul. He turned back to look at Veltar on the screen. Commander, let me explain what's happening. Every piece of technology you've bought, traded for, or stolen over the past 1,000 years has been touched by human hands at some point. We've been very patient, very careful, and very thorough. Arns called out from his tactical station. Sir, the nanobots are working perfectly. Most of their main fleet will be completely disabled within the hour. Veltar felt his blood turn cold. Nanobots? Microscopic machines, Morrison explained. We've been seeding your supply chains for centuries. Every time you built a new ship, installed new equipment, or upgraded your systems, you were also installing our little surprises. We just had to wait for the right moment to activate them. Hamilton looked up from her station. Captain, we're receiving surrender requests from 12 Zephyrian vessels. They've lost all weapons and engine power. Accept their surrenders, Morrison ordered. Keep our weapons locked on them just in case. Veltar was starting to understand how completely he had been outmaneuvered. The humans had not just survived their civilization's destruction, they had used it as an opportunity to disappear and plan their revenge. For 5,000 years, they had been like invisible ghosts, watching and preparing. This is impossible, Veltar said. Your species was destroyed. Your worlds were burned. We have the historical records. Yes, Earth fell, Morrison agreed. But we didn't all die with it. We scattered to the stars and went to sleep, waiting for the right time too. Wake up. Some of us became traders. Some became merchants. Some became refugees looking for help. We were everywhere, but you never noticed us because you thought we were extinct. Barnes pressed more buttons on his control panel. Sir, Long Watch vessels in 17 different star systems are now active. They're reporting similar success. Rates against local Zephyrian forces. Morrison's smile grew wider. Commander Veltar, your empire is ending. Right now, across the galaxy, human ships are waking up and Zephyrian fleets are going dark. This is happening in every system you control. On his own bridge, Veltar could see his officers looking at him with fear and confusion.
Oh, they had always
believed the Zephyrians were the strongest species in the galaxy. No one had ever defeated them in a major battle. But now they were being destroyed by an enemy they thought was long dead. What do you want? Veltar asked. Justice, Morrison replied. For 5,000 years, your people have been conquering and enslaving other species. You've destroyed entire civilizations. You've committed genocide against dozens of innocent races. Did you think no one was keeping track? Rodriguez called out from his station. Captain, we're getting reports from the other Long Watch ships. They're detecting ships from the old Nexus Coalition, the Korthak Resistance, and several other species we thought were extinct. Looks like we weren't the only ones playing dead. Morrison nodded. He had hoped this would happen. Humanity had not been the only species to fake their own destruction to escape Zephyrian conquest. Others had been hiding and waiting too. Commander Veltar, Morrison said. You're about to learn something important about the species you've been bullying for 5,000 years. We don't just give up and die. We adapt. We survive. And we remember. Hamilton stood up from her station. Captain, the Zephyrian homeworld is on the line. High Command wants to negotiate. Tell them we'll talk, Morrison said. They need to release every slave, free every conquered world, and return every stolen piece of technology to its original owners. Veltar's face went pale green. That's impossible. Our entire civilization is built on conquest. Then your civilization is going to have to change, Morrison replied. Because the age of Zephyrian dominance is over. Barnes looked up from his tactical display. Sir, more ships are coming out of hiding across the galaxy. I'm reading Voltrani cruisers, Nexus battleships, even some species I don't recognize. It looks like everyone's been waiting for someone to make the first move. Morrison felt a deep satisfaction in his chest. The plan was working even better than they had hoped. Humanity had not just survived, they had inspired other species to survive as well. The Zephyrian Empire was about to face enemies they thought they had destroyed centuries ago. Commander Veltar, Morrison said, "I'm going to give you 1 hour to contact your government and arrange a complete surrender. If you refuse, we will take your fleet apart piece by piece." The transmission ended, leaving Veltar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his officers waited for orders, but the commander had no idea what to do. In one day, his all-powerful empire had become a helpless collection of broken ships surrounded by enemies who were supposed to be dead, for the first time in 5,000 years. The Zephyrians were the ones who were afraid. 3 hours later, Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution. Watching as Zephyrian ships across the galaxy sent surrender signals. On his main screen, dozens of alien fleet commanders were appearing one by one, all asking for mercy from the humans they had thought were extinct. The last to appear was Supreme Commander Thelvas, the leader of the entire Zephyrian Empire. He was an old alien with dark green skin and scars covering his face from a lifetime of battles. But now, for the first time in his long life, he looked defeated. "Captain Morrison," Thelvas said, his voice tired and bitter, "you have won. That are your terms?" Morrison looked around his bridge at his crew. Hamilton nodded from her station. Rodriguez gave him a thumbs up. Barnes was smiling as he monitored the surrender of the last Zephyrian battle groups. They had done it. After 5,000 years of planning and waiting, humanity had returned to the galaxy in triumph. Supreme Commander Morrison said, "My terms are simple. You will immediately free every enslaved species in your empire. You will return all stolen technology and resources to their original owners. You will withdraw your forces from every conquered world and allow those civilizations to govern themselves." Thelvas' face darkened. "If we do that, our empire will collapse. Our people will have nothing left. Your people will have to learn to live without taking from others," Morrison replied. "The age of conquest is over. The age of cooperation begins now." Hamilton stood up from her station. "Captain, we're receiving transmissions from liberated worlds across the galaxy. The Nexus Coalition has reformed with their original government. The Veltrani are rebuilding their fleet. Even species we thought were completely extinct are coming out of hiding." Morrison felt pride swell in his chest. Humanity had not just survived their own destruction. They had given hope back to dozens of other species who had also refused to give up. Rodriguez called out from engineering, "Sir, the Long Watch fleet is fully operational. 17 ships reporting ready status. Across 9 star systems. We have enough firepower to enforce any agreement we make." Barnes added from tactical, "And the nanobots are still active in their systems. Even if they tried to fight, most of their ships can barely move." Morrison turned back to Thelvas on the screen. "Supreme Commander, you have a choice. You can accept these terms and help us build a better galaxy, or you can refuse and watch your empire die slowly as every species you ever conquered takes their revenge." Thelvas was quiet for a long moment. Behind him, Morrison could see other Zephyrian commanders arguing quietly among themselves. Finally, the old alien leader spoke. "What guarantee do we have that you won't simply destroy us once we surrender?" "You have my word as a representative of humanity," Morrison said. "We're not conquerors like you were. We just want justice and peace." "The word of humans," Thelvas said bitterly. "Hey, your species has been lying to us for 5,000 years. Morrison shook his head. "We never lied to you. You just never asked the right questions. You assumed we were dead because it was easier than admitting you had failed to kill us all." On another screen, Morrison could see Lieutenant Kexmoth and his soldiers being escorted to a holding area by human security teams. The young Zephyrian officer looked confused and defeated. In just a few hours, everything he had believed about the galaxy had been proven wrong. Hamilton approached Morrison's chair. "Captain, we're getting a priority message from the Long Watch. Ship in the Alpha Sector. They've made contact with something called the Human Colonial Authority. Apparently, some of our refugee fleets actually made it to new worlds and built colonies." Morrison's eyes widened. That was the best news he had heard in 5,000 years. Not only had humanity survived, but they had actually thrived in some parts of the galaxy. The Zephyrians had not just failed to destroy them completely. They had failed completely. How many colonies? Morrison asked. At least 30 worlds, Hamilton replied. With a total population in the hundreds of millions, they've been hiding in systems too far away for the Zephyrians to reach. Morrison turned back to Thelvas. Supreme Commander, I just learned that humanity has been doing much better than even I knew. We have entire colonies of humans living, free across the galaxy. Your empire was never as powerful as you thought it was. Thelvas closed his eyes in defeat. What do you want us to do? I want you to do what humans had to do 5,000 years ago, Morrison said. I want you to start over. Build a civilization based on trade and cooperation instead of war and slavery. Learn to be part of the galactic community instead of trying to rule it. Barnes called out from his station. Captain, the other liberated species are asking what role humanity will play in the new galactic government. Morrison thought about that question carefully. Humanity had the power to become the new rulers of this part of the galaxy. They could build their own empire and rule over the Zephyrians the way the Zephyrians had ruled over everyone else. But that was not why they had spent 5,000 years planning this moment. Tell them that humanity wants to be partners, not rulers, Morrison said. We've all suffered under the Zephorian Empire. Now we need to work together to build something better. Rodriguez looked up from his console. Sir, we're receiving surrender documents from the last Zephirian holdout fleets. The war is officially over. Morrison nodded and turned back to Thelvas. Supreme Commander, do you surrender the Zephyrian Empire and accept our terms? Thelvas looked at his advisors one more time, then back at Morrison. I surrender. Zephyrian Empire is ended. We will comply with your terms. Good, Morrison said. Now the real work begins. Over the following months, the galaxy changed rapidly. Zephyrian forces withdrew from conquered worlds. Enslaved species were freed and given ships to return to their homeworlds. The massive Zephyrian fleet was broken up, most ships being converted to cargo vessels and civilian transports. The Zephyrians themselves struggled to adapt to their new reality. Some accepted the changes and tried to build peaceful relationships with their former enemies. Others retreated to their core worlds and remained bitter about their defeat. But they no longer had the power to threaten anyone. Morrison and his crew spent a year helping to establish the new Galactic Cooperation Council, a government where all species had equal voices. Then they finally returned to human space to reunite. With the colonies that had been growing in secret for 5,000 years, on the day Morrison finally stepped onto a human world again, he stood under an alien sun and breathed air that smelled like home. Around him, millions of humans were celebrating their species' return to galactic prominence. Children who had only heard stories about Earth ran up to touch the uniform of a real Earth Defense Force captain. Was it worth it, Jake? Hamlet asked, standing beside him. Morrison looked up at the sky, where he could see the lights of human ships bring in more refugees home from across the galaxy. After 5,000 years of hiding, planning, and waiting, humanity was finally free to rejoin the community of worlds. Yes, he said, it was worth every year. The age of human exile was over. The age of galactic peace had begun.
The massive alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, like a pack of hungry wolves surrounding a sheep. Admiral Zektar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with cold satisfaction as 500 warships took their positions. The Valdorian Empire had conquered 47 worlds in the past century, and Earth would be number 48. Captain Jake Miller was finishing his morning coffee aboard the Luna Defense Station when the alarm started screaming. He rushed to the command center where Lieutenant Amy Brooks was staring at her sensors with wide eyes. The readings made no sense at first, then the terrible truth became clear. "Sir, we have incoming contacts," Amy said, her voice barely steady. "Multiple contacts, very multiple." Jake looked at the display and felt his stomach drop. Red dots filled the screen like a rash, each one representing an alien warship. He had trained for this moment his entire career, but seeing it happen felt like watching a nightmare come true. "How many?" he asked. 512 confirmed vessels, sir. Various classes. The largest ones are bigger than anything we've ever seen. Commander Ben Hayes joined them at the tactical station. His face was pale but determined. They all knew what this meant. After decades of wondering if humanity was alone in the universe, they had their answer. And that answer was pointing weapons at Earth. "Get me Admiral Stone at Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Priority Alpha transmission." The communication came through immediately. Admiral Frank Stone appeared on the screen, his weathered face grim but calm. Behind him, Jake could see the organized chaos of Earth's defense headquarters as officers rushed to battle stations. "We see them, Captain Miller," Stone said before Jake could speak. "President Carter is being briefed now. How long do we have?" Amy checked her calculations. "At their current speed, they'll reach Earth orbit in 6 hours, sir." Stone nodded. "Understood. Prepare your station for combat operations. All defense protocols are now active." The transmission ended, leaving Jake and his crew to stare at the impossible odds. Earth's entire defense fleet consisted of 50 ships, most of them patrol vessels, and cargo haulers, hastily converted for military use. Against 500 alien warships, they might as well be throwing rocks at a hurricane. On the Valdorian flagship, Admiral Zektar reviewed the intelligence reports with amusement. These humans had been broadcasting radio signals into space for over a century, giving the Empire plenty of time to study their primitive civilization. The most recent intercepted transmissions showed crude chemical rockets and simple nuclear weapons. They would be crushed like insects. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human world," his communications officer reported. "Put it through," Zektar ordered. The image of a human female appeared on the screen. President Lisa Carter stood behind a podium in what appeared to be some kind of government building. Her expression was calm, but her eyes showed the fear of someone who knew death was coming. "This is President Carter of the United Earth Government," she said. "We know you can understand our language from your monitoring of our communications. We ask for peaceful contact and negotiation." Zektar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "How predictable. Open a channel." The transmission went live across Earth's networks. Every human on the planet would hear what came next. "Primitive humans," Zektar began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had destroyed worlds. "I am Admiral Zektar of the Valdorian Empire. Your world is now claimed in the name of Emperor Vektal the Conqueror. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. Lay down your weapons and prepare for occupation. Resist, and we will turn your planet to ash." The transmission ended. On Earth, President Carter looked around the room at General Ryan Cooper and the other military leaders. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. They were about to be wiped out. "Ma'am," General Cooper said quietly, "we should consider the surrender option. Maybe we can negotiate terms for the civilian population." Carter shook her head. "No. Signal all defense stations. Activate Protocol 7. The room went quiet. Protocol 7 was theoretical, something they had hoped never to use. But if there was ever a time for desperate measures, this was it. Back on Luna Station, Jake received the coded transmission. His hands shook slightly as he entered the authorization codes. Amy and Ben watched as hidden systems throughout the solar system began to wake up. "Sir," Amy said, checking her sensors, "I'm detecting energy signatures from the asteroid belt and Jupiter orbit. And everywhere." Jake allowed himself a small smile. The aliens thought they were facing a primitive species with 50 ships. They had no idea what humanity had been building in secret for the past 30 years. Admiral Zektar watched his sensors with growing confusion. The human ships weren't running or hiding. Instead, they were taking combat positions like they actually planned to fight. It was either admirable bravery or complete insanity. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting unusual energy, readings from multiple locations in the system. The humans appear to have installations we didn't know about." Zektar waved dismissively. "Mining stations and research outposts. Nothing that can threaten us. Begin the advance." First wave, 100 ships. Show these humans what real power looks like. The Valdorian fleet began to move, their massive ships gliding through space like predators closing in for the kill. On Luna Station, Jake watched them come and activated his ship's weapons systems. Around him, his crew prepared for what everyone assumed would be their final battle. All stations, this is Miller, he broadcast to the human fleet. You know what's at stake, make every shot count. President Carter stood in the command bunker deep beneath Washington, watching the tactical display as alien and human forces moved toward each other. General Cooper stood beside her, his face grave. Ma'am, are you sure about this? He asked. Once we reveal what we've been hiding, there's no going back. Carter nodded firmly. They came here to destroy us. Let's show them what humans do to uninvited guests. The hour was almost up, and the first alien ships were entering weapon range. In a few minutes, the battle for Earth would begin, and the galaxy would learn whether humanity deserved to survive or was just another species to be conquered and forgotten. The moment President Carter activated Protocol 7, hidden installations across the solar system began to stir like sleeping giants. Lieutenant Colonel Dan Phillips sat in what appeared to be a simple asteroid mining station in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. For 15 years, he had maintained the cover story that Station Alpha 7 was just another rock processing facility. The truth was far different. Phillips, to all mining stations, he spoke into his communicator. The harvest season has begun. Around him, his crew of supposedly civilian miners dropped their disguises and took positions at military control stations. The asteroid they had been living inside for over a decade was actually a hollowed-out weapons platform the size of a small moon. As the transformation began, external camouflage panels slid away to reveal massive railgun batteries and missile launch tubes. Similar awakenings were happening throughout the asteroid belt. What alien scanners had identified as 43 mining operations were actually 43 hidden military bases. Each one had been carefully positioned along the most likely invasion routes to Earth. Commander Kate Johnson was having her own revelation near Jupiter. Her research station, studying the gas giant's moons, had been monitoring alien communications for months. The station appeared to be a collection of scientific modules and observation platforms. In reality, it was the most heavily armed fortress humanity had ever built. All research teams report to battle stations, Kate announced over the intercom. Her team of fake scientists revealed themselves as the cream of Earth's military elite. The station's solar panel arrays folded back to expose enough firepower to level a continent. Captain Steve Adams aboard the UES Liberty was preparing for the shock of his life. His ship looked like a standard patrol vessel, the kind that might chase smugglers or respond to distress calls. But when he entered his command codes, the ship began to transform. Hidden armor plating emerged from concealed compartments. Weapon ports that had been disguised as sensor arrays revealed themselves. The small patrol ship suddenly became a predator. Adams to Fleet Command, Steve reported. Liberty is combat ready. All systems showing green. Admiral Stone received similar reports from across the solar system. The 50 ships that comprised Earth's defense fleet were just the visible tip of a massive iceberg. Every cargo hauler, research vessel, and mining ship had been secretly converted into a weapon of war. More importantly, they were armed with technology the aliens had never seen before. Dr. Rachel Green stood in the deepest levels of the Cheyenne Mountain complex, surrounded by the most classified project in human history. For 30 years, she had led a team of the world's best scientists in reverse engineering alien technology. Not from the current invasion, but from earlier encounters that the public had never learned about. General Cooper, she said into her headset. The fusion cores are online. All ships are now operating at full power. The breakthrough had come 12 years ago when a Valdorian scout ship had crash-landed in the Pacific. Instead of announcing first contact to the world, the government had quietly retrieved the wreckage and begun studying it. What they found revolutionized human understanding of physics, energy generation, and space travel. But humanity hadn't just copied the alien technology. They had improved it. Human engineers had taken Valdorian fusion reactors and made them smaller, more efficient, and far more powerful. Alien shield generators became the foundation for defensive systems that were nearly impenetrable. Weapon. Designs were enhanced with human innovations that the original builders had never considered. Captain Jake Miller watched his tactical display as energy signatures bloomed across the solar system. Ships that had been running on minimal power suddenly blazed like stars. The alien fleet was about to discover that humans had been preparing for this day for decades. Admiral Zektar noticed the energy readings with growing concern. His sensor operator was reporting impossible numbers. The small human ships were generating power levels that should have required reactors the size of buildings. Their own intelligence clearly had massive gaps. Tactical analysis, he demanded. Sir, the humans appear to have technology we weren't aware of. Some of these energy signatures match our own ship classifications, but that's impossible given their primitive industrial base. Zektar studied the display. The humans had exactly 50 ships against his 500. Even with unexpectedly advanced technology, the numbers were overwhelming in his favor. But something felt wrong about the situation. Lieutenant Amy Brooks, on Luna Station, was coordinating with installations she had never known existed. Her communication board lit up with signals from across the system. Mining stations, research outposts, and patrol ships were all reporting combat readiness. The key. Lonely Defense of Earth had become a carefully orchestrated military operation. Sir, she reported to Captain Miller, I'm receiving acknowledgement signals from 237 installations and vessels. Jake smiled grimly. The aliens thought they were facing 50 ships. They were actually looking at nearly 300 combat platforms, each one armed with technology that had been perfected specifically to kill Valdorian warships. Commander Ben Hayes was reviewing the tactical data when he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The alien fleet formation was following predictable patterns, textbook approaches that suggested they had used the same strategies against other species, strategies that human military planners had studied and prepared countermeasures for. They're not adapting, he realized. They're following standard imperial doctrine exactly as predicted. President Carter received updates from installations across the system. The hidden truth of humanity's preparations was finally being revealed. Every major asteroid had been converted into a weapons platform. Every scientific expedition had been a cover for military positioning. Every peaceful research station was actually a fortress waiting for this moment. Ma'am, General Cooper reported. All assets are in position. We have complete coverage of all approach vectors. The aliens have no idea what they're flying into. The Valdorian advance continued, their lead ships moving confidently toward what they believed was an easy victory. Behind them, Admiral Zektar was beginning to understand that human radio broadcasts might not have told the complete story about Earth's capabilities, but it was too late to reconsider. His fleet was committed to the attack, and in a few minutes, the first shots would be fired. The question was no longer whether humans could resist. The question was whether any of the Valdorian ships would survive long enough to report what they had discovered. Admiral Zektar grew tired of waiting and decided to end the human resistance quickly. He turned to his tactical officer with cold determination in his alien eyes. The hour of negotiation was over, and it was time to show these primitives the power of the Valdorian Empire. Signal the first wave, he commanded. 100 ships, full attack formation. Destroy any human vessel that resists. Make this quick and brutal so the survivors understand their situation. The lead Valdorian ships accelerated toward Earth, their weapons charging and shields at maximum power. Each vessel was larger than anything humans had ever built. Or so, the aliens believed. Their formation was perfect, their approach textbook imperial doctrine that had worked against dozens of other worlds. Captain Jake Miller watched the enemy ships closing in and felt his heart hammering in his chest. This was the moment that would decide humanity's fate. He opened a channel to every human ship and station in the system. All units, this is Miller. Remember your training. Remember what these bastards want to do to our world. Show them what happens when you threaten Earth. Attack pattern Alpha, execute now. The UES Defender suddenly blazed with power as its hidden systems came online. What had appeared to be a simple patrol vessel transformed into something the aliens had never encountered. Its engines flared with impossible brightness as it accelerated directly toward the alien formation at speeds that should have torn the ship apart. Lieutenant Amy Brooks watched her tactical display with amazement as human ships across the system revealed their true nature. The small patrol craft became sleek predators. The cargo haulers sprouted weapons that belonged on battleships. The mining vessels emerged from asteroids like metal dragons waking from sleep. Admiral Zektar stared at his sensors in disbelief as the first human ship reached weapon range. The small vessel should have been vaporized instantly by his lead ships, but instead it danced between their attacks like it was reading their minds. Then it fired back. The human weapon struck the Valdorian heavy cruiser INS Dominator with a beam that cut through its shields like they were made of paper. The massive alien ship, 3 times larger than any human vessel, simply exploded. Debris scattered across space as the other Valdorian ships tried to understand what had just happened. "Impossible," Zektar whispered. "Run tactical analysis on that weapon signature." Commander Ben Hayes coordinated the human attack from Luna Station as more ships entered the battle. The aliens had expected to fight primitive vessels with chemical rockets and basic lasers. Instead, they found themselves facing weapons that seemed to defy physics and ships that moved like living things. Captain Steve Adams pushed the Liberty through the alien formation, his enhanced engines giving him speed and maneuverability that made the enemy ships look like they were standing still. Every shot from his weapons found its target, punching through alien hulls and causing massive explosions. "Liberty to Fleet Command," he reported calmly. "Enemy armor is weaker than expected. Their shields can't handle our quantum-enhanced weapons. This is like shooting practice." The asteroid belt came alive as Lieutenant Colonel Dan Phillips activated the hidden weapons platforms. Massive rail guns that had been disguised as mining equipment began hurling projectiles at near light speed. Each shot could penetrate multiple enemy ships, leaving trails of destruction through the alien formations. Commander Kate Johnson's Jupiter station revealed itself as the monster it truly was. The research platform unfolded into a fortress bristling with enough firepower to destroy a fleet. Her first salvo eliminated 6 Valdorian ships simultaneously, their wreckage tumbling toward Jupiter's gravity well. Admiral Zektar watched his carefully planned invasion dissolve into chaos. Human ships were everywhere, moving with impossible speed and striking with weapons that his best scientists couldn't identify. His tactical officer was shouting reports that made no sense. "Sir, we've lost 30 ships in the first 2 minutes. The humans are using some kind of enhanced fusion technology. Their weapons are penetrating our shields like they don't exist." The alien admiral tried to process what he was seeing. The humans hadn't just surprised them with hidden ships. They had completely superior technology. Ships that looked primitive, on the outside, were actually more advanced than anything the Valdorian Empire had ever built. Dr. Rachel Green monitored the battle from her command center deep inside Cheyenne Mountain. The weapons her team had developed were performing even better than hoped. 30 years of reverse engineering alien technology, and then improving it, had created an arsenal that the original designers could never have imagined. "General Cooper," she reported with satisfaction, "all weapon systems are operating at peak efficiency. The aliens can't adapt to our enhanced fusion cores and quantum shielding. Their tactics were designed to fight primitive civilizations, not peers." Commander Tony Walker led a squadron of human fighters that looked like simple interceptors but moved like supernatural beings. His pilots weaved through the alien formation, their small craft destroying ships 10 times their size. The Valdorian point defense systems couldn't track targets moving at such impossible speeds. "Walker to control," he transmitted between kills. "The big ugly ships can't hit us. Their weapons are too slow. It's like fighting in slow motion." President Carter watched the battle unfold from Earth's command center. The tactical display showed human forces systematically dismantling the alien advance. What should have been humanity's darkest hour was becoming their greatest triumph. Admiral Zektar realized with growing horror that his invasion force was being destroyed by creatures he had dismissed as primitives. Half his first wave was already debris floating in space, and the humans weren't even breathing hard. "All ships fall back to defensive positions," he ordered desperately. "Reform the battle line. Concentrate fire on individual human vessels." But it was too late for tactics. The humans had spent decades preparing for exactly this moment, and they were executing a plan that had been refined through countless simulations. Every alien move had been anticipated and countered before the battle even began. The slaughter continued as more human weapons platforms revealed themselves throughout the solar system. The aliens found themselves caught in a perfectly orchestrated trap, surrounded by enemies they never knew existed and facing technology they couldn't comprehend or counter. The battle had lasted exactly 12 minutes when Admiral Zektar realized his invasion force was finished. 300 of his 500 warships were already scattered debris floating through space, and the humans showed no signs of slowing down. The remaining Valdorian ships were trapped in a perfectly executed killing field with no escape route. Captain Sam Davis led the human pursuit squadron as panic spread through the alien fleet. His ship, the UES Hunter, moved like a predator stalking wounded prey, picking off damaged Valdorian vessels before they could retreat. The aliens were learning what it meant to be hunted by something faster and deadlier than themselves. "Davis to all pursuit units," he transmitted calmly. "No survivors reached the system edge. The Empire cannot learn what happened here." "Admiral," Stone coordinated the final phase of the battle from Earth Command. The tactical display showed human forces converging on the remaining alien ships from every direction. What had started as humanity's desperate last stand had become the systematic destruction of an entire invasion fleet. Dr. Rachel Green watched her weapons perform beyond all expectations. The quantum-enhanced railguns were punching through alien capital ships like they were made of cardboard. The fusion missiles were causing chain reactions that destroyed multiple targets with single shots. 30 years of preparation had created a technological advantage that the aliens could never overcome. "General Cooper, the enemy fleet is completely neutralized," she reported with quiet satisfaction. "Our casualty count remains 0. Not a single human vessel has been lost." Commander Ben Hayes tallied the destruction from Luna Station. His tactical computer showed impossible numbers that he had to verify 3 times. 500 alien warships had been reduced to wreckage in less than 15 minutes. The most powerful invasion force in Valdorian history had been wiped out by what they thought was a primitive species. President Carter addressed the nation from the White House as the last alien ships died in space. Behind her, the flags of every Earth nation stood as symbols of unified resistance. The people of Earth had spent the morning thinking they were about to be conquered, and now they were watching their enemies burn. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice carrying across every communication network on the planet. "Today we faced extinction and chose to fight. Today we discovered that we are not the weak species our enemies believed us to be. Today we proved that Earth belongs to humanity." Admiral Zektar made one final desperate attempt to save some portion of his fleet. He ordered the surviving ships to scatter and run for hyperspace, hoping that a few might escape to warn the Empire. It was a futile gesture that only prolonged the inevitable. Commander Kate Johnson's Jupiter Fortress targeted the fleeing command ship with weapons designed to crack moons. The massive Valdorian flagship, pride of the Imperial fleet, simply vaporized under the concentrated fire. Admiral Zektar died without understanding how completely he had been outmatched. Lieutenant Colonel Dan Phillips watched the last alien stragglers try to escape through the asteroid belt. His hidden weapons platforms had perfect firing solutions on every enemy vessel. The aliens who had come to conquer Earth were now running for their lives through a maze of human death traps. "Mining Station Alpha 7 to Fleet Command," he reported. "Final enemy vessel eliminated. The belt is clear of hostiles." Captain Jake Miller stood on the bridge of the Defender as the battle ended. Around him, his crew was processing what they had just witnessed. Earth's defense fleet had not only survived the alien invasion but had completely annihilated it. The impossible had become reality in 12 minutes of perfect execution. Lieutenant Amy Brooks ran final sensor sweeps to confirm what everyone already knew. The space around Earth was filled with alien debris, but contained no living enemy vessels. The Valdorian invasion force had been reduced to scrap metal and expanding clouds of plasma. "Sir, I'm reading 0 alien life signs in the entire system," she confirmed. "The invasion fleet has been completely destroyed." The hidden truth of humanity's preparations was finally revealed to the world. Presidents and prime ministers learned that their military forces had been building secret weapons for decades. Mining operations in space had been covers for fortress construction. Scientific expeditions had been military deployments. The entire Human space program had been one massive preparation for this single battle. Admiral Stone received damage reports from across the human fleet. The numbers seemed impossible but were verified multiple times. Against 500 alien warships, humanity had suffered 0 casualties. Not one human ship destroyed. Not one installation damaged. Not one life lost in the greatest battle in human history. Dr. Rachel Green began analyzing the wreckage of alien ships, already planning how to improve human technology even further. The Valdorians had provided detailed examples of Imperial military hardware, all of it inferior to what humanity had developed in secret. The student had surpassed the teacher. President Carter convened an emergency session with world leaders to discuss what came next. The alien invasion had been stopped, but questions remained about the Valdorian Empire and other potential threats. The battle for Earth was over, but humanity's war for survival might just be beginning. Commander Tony Walker reported from his fighter squadron as they finished patrol sweeps around Earth. The homeworld was secure, defended by weapons that had proven themselves against the galaxy's most feared military force. But Walker was already thinking about what lay beyond the solar system. Captain Steve Adams aboard the Liberty began analyzing the alien navigation data recovered from destroyed ships. The computers contained star charts showing the location of every Valdorian world, military base, and supply depot. Information that could be very useful if humanity decided to carry the war to the enemy. The solar system fell quiet as the last pieces of alien debris tumbled through space. Earth continued to orbit peacefully around its sun, but everything had changed. Humanity had revealed itself as something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The species that aliens thought would be easy prey had become apex predators in 12 minutes of devastating combat. The Valdorian Empire would eventually wonder what happened to their invasion fleet. When they came looking for answers, they would find that the hunters had become the hunted. 3 months after the destruction of the Valdorian invasion fleet, President Carter stood before a joint session of Congress to announce humanity's response to the attempted conquest. The world had spent those months learning the truth about their hidden defenses and coming to terms with their new reality as a galactic power. The Valdorian Empire sent 500 warships to destroy our civilization, Carter declared. They believed we were primitive and helpless. They were wrong, on both counts. Today we begin Operation Prometheus, humanity's answer to those who would threaten our world. Admiral Stone coordinated the largest military operation in human history from a command center that had been secretly built inside the moon. Around him, officers monitored the deployment of forces that had been preparing for this moment since the day the first alien wreckage was recovered from the Pacific Ocean. Captain Jake Miller stood on the bridge of his ship as it prepared to leave the solar system for the first time. The Defender had been upgraded with technology salvaged from destroyed Valdorian vessels, making it even more deadly than during the invasion battle. Behind him, 1,000 human warships prepared to carry the fight to enemy territory. The alien navigation data had revealed the locations of every Valdorian military installation, supply depot, and inhabited world. Dr. Rachel Green's teams had spent months analyzing the intelligence and planning strikes that would cripple the Empire's ability to threaten Earth ever again. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Stone," came the transmission to every human ship. "The Empire believes their invasion force was destroyed by some unknown enemy. They have no idea that Earth is responsible. We will use that ignorance against them." Commander Kate Johnson's Jupiter Fortress had been converted into a massive shipyard, producing vessels designed specifically for long-range assault operations. The ships looked like innocent cargo haulers and research vessels, but carried enough firepower to level cities. The same deception that had protected Earth would now be used to destroy her enemies. Captain Sam Davis led the first human fleet to enter Valdorian space. His ships emerged from hyperspace near the industrial world of Kethvar, a major military production center. The planet's orbital defenses detected the approaching vessels but saw only a small merchant convoy that posed no threat. Lieutenant Colonel Dan Phillips commanded the assault on the Valdorian Naval Academy on Zexmar. His disguised battleships appeared to be a routine supply convoy until they reached optimal firing range. Then they revealed their true nature and began systematically destroying every military installation on the planet. The Valdorian defenders sent distress calls that would never be answered. Human jamming technology, reverse-engineered and improved from alien designs, blocked all communications. Each attack happened in perfect isolation, with no survivors to report what had occurred. Admiral Stone received reports from across Valdorian territory as Operation Prometheus unfolded exactly as planned. Every major military base was simultaneously under attack by forces the Empire never saw coming. The same tactics that had destroyed the invasion fleet were being used on a galactic scale. President Carter watched the tactical displays showing human forces striking throughout the Empire. Each green dot represented a successful mission, another Valdorian stronghold reduced to rubble. The species that had tried to conquer Earth was learning what it meant to face humanity's full wrath. Dr. Rachel Green studied the reports from captured Valdorian installations. The aliens had ruled their empire through fear and overwhelming force, exactly the same methods they had planned to use on Earth. Now they were experiencing what their victims had endured for centuries. Commander Ben Hayes coordinated supply lines, stretching across hundreds of light years. Human ships moved through space like ghosts, appearing without warning to deliver devastating attacks before vanishing again. The Empire's communication networks reported impossible things that their leaders refused to believe. Captain Steve Adams led raids against Valdorian research facilities, capturing scientists and their work for analysis. Every piece of alien technology became the foundation for even more advanced human weapons. The technological gap that had saved Earth was growing wider with each captured installation. The Valdorian High Command finally understood they were facing an organized enemy when reports came in from 50 different worlds on the same day. But they had no idea who was attacking them or where the strikes were coming from. Their own intelligence networks had been completely infiltrated by human agents. Commander Tony Walker's fighter squadrons struck deep into Valdorian territory, hitting targets that should have been impossible to reach. His pilots moved through enemy space like they owned it, destroying anything that might threaten human operations. The hunters had become the apex predators of the galaxy. Lieutenant Amy Brooks monitored alien communications from her station aboard, a disguised intelligence vessel. The Valdorian military was in complete chaos, receiving contradictory reports and unable to coordinate any effective response. Their empire was collapsing from within. President Carter addressed the United Nations as human forces reached the Valdorian homeworld. The planet that had launched the invasion of Earth now faced the same choice they had offered humanity: surrender or face complete destruction. The Valdorian Empire has ruled through conquest and fear for over 1,000 years, she announced. Today that reign ends. Today they learn what happens when predators become prey. Captain Jake Miller watched Valdorian Prime appear on his view screen. The heavily defended world was the heart of an empire that had crushed dozens of civilizations. Its orbital fortresses and planetary shields were considered impregnable by galactic standards. They would prove inadequate against human weapons. The final battle was brief and decisive. Valdorian defenses that had protected the homeworld for centuries were overwhelmed in minutes. The planet's surface installations were reduced to craters. The Emperor's palace, symbol of imperial power, became a smoking ruin. Dr. Rachel Green received the final transmission from Valdorian Prime before its communication systems were destroyed. The message was simple and desperate: complete surrender, and a plea for mercy. President Carter's response was broadcast across the galaxy. The Valdorian Empire is dissolved. Their fleets are destroyed. Their worlds are liberated. Let this be a lesson to any species that would threaten humanity. We came from a single world, and we conquered an empire. Do not test us again. The galaxy had learned a new truth. Earth was not prey.